Now up, we have another session on packaging, how to improve its carbon footprint. While Patrick's focuses on plastic free, wraps is a slightly wider and also includes recycling and reuse. Helen Bird is head of material system transformation at WRAP, a national think tank and charity responsible for award-winning voluntary business agreements across plastics and textiles, as well as a citizen behavior change and working with local and national policy. Helen is going to share how to reduce the carbon footprint of packaging through major system changes, the considerations for material selection, the importance of recycling in achieving net zero, and how industry can collaborate to achieve its goals. Over to you.
Hi everyone, good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me here this afternoon. So let's get straight to it. Now I'm hoping that the technology is going to be working seamlessly, maybe a slight delay as I click through. Aha, here we go. So I suppose the key point that I just wanted to make straight away is that the circular economy principles are absolutely central to achieving net zero. And the reason I state this is because sometimes at WRAP we're challenged with this question of, well, can you achieve both? Can you achieve both net zero and a circular economy? And I think the answer is we absolutely have to. And so many of you will be familiar with the circular economy principles, but this is about keeping materials within the system as long as we possibly can. And the reason why that this is central to net zero is because the goods that we consume, the foods we eat, the clothes we wear, account for nearly half of all world's global emissions, and is therefore a major contributor to global warming and biodiversity loss. So that's kind of key point number one. The second thing I just wanted to say straight away as well is that there are many businesses that have multiple targets. And so for industry, they're trying to think about how to hit all of their targets. So many businesses will be signed up science-based targets to achieve net zero across businesses and products by 2050, including scope 3. So this is very much including the impact of packaging as well. And many businesses will also be signed up to other initiatives, including the UK Plastics Pact, which I'm very proud to oversee. And those targets are focused on plastic. So it's about eliminating problematic and unnecessary plastic, achieving all of it to be designed to be recyclable or compostable, maximising the recycling rate of it, and also that material pull by including recycled content, with an industry average of up to 30% by 2025. And so sometimes we see kind of this tension as companies are trying to achieve both things, because plastics particularly can be quite a resource efficient material. And therefore, if supermarkets, for example, are thinking about switching, well, how can they do that while also maintaining their science-based targets? So the two targets here are just examples of the targets that supermarkets are working towards. But when it comes to plastics, one of their major challenges, and for all of us that have joined the UK Plastics Pact, is this type of plastic. So plastic bags and wrapping. And the reason why they're problematic is because they're a material that is not collected at scale. Therefore, they are not recycled at scale. The end markets for them are limited. The biggest market for plastic bags and wrapping is in food contact. However, there are limitations at the moment in getting it back into food contact, particularly while advanced recycling processes don't account for the mass balance issue, which I'm sure that some of you will be aware of, hopefully to be addressed by Treasury. And the plastic bags and wrapping is one of the key things that's impeding our ability to meet the UK Plastics Pact target. But a challenge when we think about this type of plastic, when it comes to carbon, is that it's a very resource efficient material. So if a shop is thinking about, well, you're trying to get rid of plastic bags and wrapping, what do you replace it with? But then the other question is, should you be replacing it at all? The IGD have got a target to half the environmental impact of packaging by 2030, and they have done some modelling in partnership with Anthesis. And I think this is quite an interesting model, because what it shows is that basically that if we were to achieve the ambition to halve the environmental impact of packaging, you would actually have to reduce packaging in total by at least 20%, as well as maximising lots of efficiencies, including recycled content. So if we want to go for it on packaging and reduce the impact, we have to look at absolute removal as well. But we have to do this really carefully, because packaging can often play a really important role in protecting food, and that itself is a significant contributor to global warming. So if food waste were a country, it would be the third world's largest emitter of carbon. And this I thought was quite interesting. I came across this just the other day, a study by this organisation called Project Drawdown, which highlights what specific actions individuals can take to help reduce their carbon impact. And reducing food waste is absolutely top of that list. So it's really important that industry supports householders to reduce food waste. So we have to be very careful with the packaging. But that's not to say that we shouldn't look at it, because we absolutely should. So there are three key ways, I suppose, of reducing carbon from packaging. You can either completely remove it, you can reduce it, but also it's important that we think about recycling as well. When it comes to removal, this can actually deliver multiple benefits if it's done very, very carefully. And one of the examples that I just wanted to highlight is a study that WRAP conducted a couple of years back. It was an extremely extensive bit of research over an 18-month period. And we looked at the relationship between plastic packaging and fresh produce, and also refrigeration and date labels, and how these things can help or hinder household food waste, which makes up more than half of all the food waste that we have in the UK. And what we found was actually that removing plastic packaging, or removing packaging full stop, actually helps to reduce food waste. And the reason for that is because we buy too much, because it's sold to us in bulk quantities, and then we don't use it in time when we throw it away. So potatoes, for example, is one of the most highly wasted food items. We throw away an astonishing 4.4 million potatoes every year. I can't even picture what that looks like, but we throw away a lot of them, and we throw them away because we buy them in a sack and we don't use them in time. So this is an area which is a priority action for WRAP under the UK Plastic Pact and under our quartile commitment to remove packaging for multiple benefits. Also looking at removal, you could think about it as being how do we deliver products to people in a different way to enable this to happen? So, for example, through reuse and refill systems, we've seen many trials now under the UK Plastics Pact, including funded by UK Research and Innovation. So we're seeing some positive results from those trials, but it is still very much a trial stage. We need to get absolute scale from it. We also do need to be a little bit careful with reuse and refill from a carbon perspective, because the absolute key to making it carbon beneficial is the number of times the packaging goes round in a loop. So, for example, when you compare glass milk refill systems with the HDPE bottles that we use at the moment, you have to use that glass bottle at least 20 times in order for it to have the same carbon impact as the HDPE bottle. Unfortunately, a lot of these bottles don't make it around the system 20 times. They get broken or lost or not returned. So making the citizen engagement with these to make sure that they are used frequently is absolutely critical. The other way to reduce carbon impacts is through reduction. So under the UK Plastics Pact, again, we have seen many areas of plastic being removed. You're now hard pressed to find, for example, a plastic lid that goes on top of a big yogurt pot. But I also wanted just to highlight that with lightweighting or right weighting, collaboration can often be key, particularly where it's fiercely competitive. So, for example, Easter eggs. About 10 years ago, WRAP identified this issue with Easter egg packaging, and the box is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And of course, when you're buying an Easter egg, you're not just buying the chocolate inside, you're buying a gift. And so one egg stacked up to another egg, if one box is looking bigger and a bit more fancy, then that is the thing that people are going to buy. Of course they will. So what we did, we got together the key players in the Easter egg market, and set a challenge to reduce the size of the packaging, and the whole market moved together. And I think that bringing people together in this pre-competitive spirit is really important. We understand that there is commercial realities that we have to face. So that's something that we deliver under the UK Plastics Pact, for example. Another way of reducing the carbon impact is actually thinking about the product itself. So, we're shipping a lot of water around, particularly when it comes to personal and household care items. So thinking about, do we really have to deliver things using liquids? Is it better with powders? Might that save on carbon? But a watch out here is to think about the interaction of citizens with these kind of products. So, for example, we know that citizens are more likely to overdose when they're using powdered detergent relative to liquid, because when you have a liquid, you've got a nice decanter, you know exactly how much you should be decanting for a wash. So if you're moving from a liquid to a powder, which might be really great for carbon, not just the carbon impact of the packaging, but the carbon impact of the whole product, it's thinking about how will people engage with it? Might tablets be a better solution if carbon is the key thing to be focusing on? And then moving on to recycling. So the first point I think is really important is that we have to get packaging out of waste facilities. We've got to get it out of landfill. So, in 2021, 13.6 million tonnes of CO2 was coming from landfill. Too much of that was packaging. Obviously, it's not just packaging that's responsible for that carbon. But if it's going into landfill, all it's doing, unless it's an inert material, of course, is generating greenhouse gases, which we need to get away from. But when it comes to energy recovery, there are some materials that go into those facilities, which is also really bad, and plastic is one of those materials. So for plastic, even though it equates to around 17% of the input to energy from waste facilities, it's responsible for 70% of the fossil emissions. So we've got to get it out of both. We've got to get it out of energy from waste. That's the direction of travel that the waste industry is moving in. It's not such a big problem if it goes into landfill because it's inert material. However, there are many benefits from a carbon perspective in getting it back into another product, which is why recycling is so important. So when it comes to plastic, if you, by recycling a ton of plastic relative to virgin production, it's saving nearly a ton of CO2 equivalent emissions. So that's 29% less carbon than from virgin production. In the case of aluminium, it's absolutely massive. So you're saving around 8 tons of CO2 for every ton that's recycled. And glass again is there's clear winners when it comes to recycling. So recycling is an absolute no-brainer and is a really, really critical part of achieving net zero. But it doesn't just happen on its own, and we do really need to engage with citizens in order for that to happen. I should have said in my slides here that it's Recycle Week. So the theme for Recycle Week is the Big Plastics Hunt. So we have people up and down the country, particularly engaging with schools, to hunt for items which we know that are being frequently missed for recycling. So we're quite good. We're not brilliant, but we're quite good at recycling from our kitchens, for example. But when it comes to the bathroom, we're often forgetting too many shampoo bottles, shower gel bottles, that sort of plastics, and aerosols, for example, are being left behind. So we really need to capture them into the recycling. And I just highlighted on this slide with the soft plastics, and although that they are a material that are not being collected by local authorities yet, so until consistent collections come down the line, and government is intending to mandate local authorities to collect that material by 2027. At the latest we heard that, so that's kind of the latest that was that's been published by DEFRA. There are options available for people to take their materials, so we can engage with people, and they are up for it. And you might notice next time you go into a supermarket that you see these kind of receptacles, and certainly in my local supermarkets, they are generally, they're brimming with material. So that engagement with people, but it's not just about engagement with recycling. As I've said, in order for reuse and refill systems, we've got to engage with them to bring them to actually bring them back and use them effectively. And even when we remove packaging completely, it's again just making sure that people understand it and are aware of it, and we're enticing people to engage with that. So, for example, Tesco have removed the multi-wrap from tinned products like baked beans. But you would be surprised, or perhaps not, I don't know, if you're a retailer, you probably aren't surprised, how many people just want to grab the pack of 4 off the shelf rather than doing 1, 2, 3, 4. So you still need to give people the benefit, the discount of buying 4 individual items rather than just buying the multi-pack. So that is absolutely critical. And the final point, just to say, is that we're making some strong progress under the UK Plastics Pact. So we have we've eliminated around 620 million items of unnecessary problematic plastic since 2018. The amount of packaging that's now recyclable on the shelf has increased to 70%. So things that we would have seen on our shelves back in 2018, black sushi trays, for example, green plastic, which is really difficult to recycle back into packaging again, all of that's been eliminated. And we've seen a significant increase in recycled content over the time as well. So I shall leave it there, and I think that was bang on 20 minutes. So we have some time for questions if you have any.
Brilliant. So we have a question from Tomoko, who asks, how should FMCG food and beverage companies with business models relying on packaging, so Coke, Danone, etc., phase out from single-use packaging?
So how should they phase it out?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that it's going to come from a case by case and product by product basis. So there are companies like both of those organisations are signed up to the UK Plastics Pact, and are taking a number of actions to reduce the carbon impact of their packaging, as well as reduce the amount of packaging that they are that is problematic or unnecessary. So Coke, for example, has pledged to make 25% of its portfolio delivered in reuse and refill systems. Now that's a global target. And what we have to do is work out what is the best way of actually implementing that. There is a key thing that I think is an obvious necessity as well, and that is regulation. So what we have never shied away from, and is absolutely critical, is that voluntary agreement will only go so far. We can go faster than regulation for sure, and we can also set the direction of travel for regulation, but it does need to be followed up with regulation. So things like the removal of plastic packaging from fresh produce will almost certainly, there will need to be a legislative driver to really make inroads into that happening.
Brilliant, thank you. Another person has asked, as you mentioned, if reusable packaging or products aren't reused significant times, it can offset the emissions associated with aluminium or glass manufacturing, transport, and the energy and water used for cleaning. What are some anticipated break-even numbers of reusable packaging by material?
So this does have to be looked at on a case by case basis. So I gave the example of glass. You have to use that glass container 20 times in order to have the same carbon metric as a HDPE bottle. And I believe that assumption is based on the HDPE bottle not being recycled. So actually, we're recycling quite a lot of HDPE bottles. So actually, we need to reuse the glass even more. But I think I think it's going to be helpful to industry to understand what those break-even points are. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation is actually publishing a study in reuse and refill, which is being released, I believe, in about a month's time. And they've actually done some carbon modelling, which looks at long-term benefits. So yeah, so I think we'll look out for that. But I've got no doubt that we'll be, as we work more with industry on reuse and refill, we'll be looking at more examples of what the break-even point is. But because you have to do it through life cycle assessment, it's not, you've got to do it very, very specifically by product.
Laura Smith, she asked the question of, so I volunteer for unwaste.io, a social enterprise involved in global plastic waste monitoring. I'm interested in your comments on citizen engagement. Do you think there is a role for a decision-making tool or a product marking that can help consumers make better decisions in store?
So yes, I mean, I think there's eco-labeling work which is going on at the moment, which is really relates though to the product as opposed to the packaging. But obviously the product and the packaging are also inextricably linked. And there is also, this is a bit of a minefield with eco-labeling, because what does that mean? And there's always going to be there's always benefit. There's a whole bunch of trade-offs with eco-labeling. Companies have to be very careful as well about green claims. So the CMA, they've issued a number of there've been a number of cases against companies who are making green claims where they shouldn't. So I think companies are becoming more and more nervous about the claims that they make on pack, and rightly so. They should be nervous about it. The CMA has just updated its guidance, so I think that's something that people should be looking at. And then there's, in terms of the recycling labelling, this is something that is really helpful to consumers in understanding whether or not something can or can't be recycled. But that is more at the point of, you get it home, and when you're disposing of the item, where, what do you do with it? But yeah, it's certainly a minefield.
Now the question is, are bioplastics a good alternative to virgin plastic, or is it best to use plastics made from recycled content?
Yeah, this is a great question. So the key thing with bio-based plastics, and they're not to be confused with biodegradable compostables. So these are materials that are made from a plant-derived product rather than a fossil-based plastic. And they're sometimes biodegradable, but they're not always biodegradable. Now, the key issue with bio-based plastics relative to fossil-derived plastics is land use. And so if we're moving towards using bio-based plastics, which we will probably have to at some stage, it's thinking about, well, where is that material coming from? What's it being made from? Do we have enough land to grow packaging? That is going to be something that we need to do a lot of soul searching over, which again is why I think that when you think about the circular economy principles and the waste hierarchy principles, it's better to remove plastic in its entirety. That should always be at the forefront. We've seen life cycle assessments that will show both arguments, that will show both bio-based plastics can be more beneficial than fossil and the other way around. And that really depends on how wide you cast the LCA. So I think the jury's a little bit out still on bio-based plastics, to be honest, from my perspective. We're planning to do more work to look really closely at the role of bio-based plastics, including not only the environmental impact, but also with policy drivers coming down, how bio-based plastics will fit in. What does that mean for producers when it comes to the plastics tax?
So we only have time for one last question. So Naomi has mentioned, considering that a monomaterial, for example, a polypropylene piece can be recycled, whereas a multi-layered packaging cannot. So, for example, cardboard laminated with polyethylene. What are the best alternatives for products that induce contamination, e.g., meat packaging?
Okay, so this is a sort of a plastic tray versus a card that's been laminated in plastic. So I would say that from a recyclability perspective, there are designs that you can make to split those two materials in two. Whether or not people do it or not is got to be a consideration. And so therefore, if you're ripping the packaging open to get the steak or whatever it is out of it, then when it goes into a high-speed mill, will that do the rest of the job and remove the contamination? If it will, then perhaps that's you've solved one potential problem, albeit the plastic is never, that plastic is not going to get recycled. That's going to go to energy recovery. The other consideration with a polypropylene tray is that yes, you're going to be able to recycle it, but not yet back into food grade packaging. But we need to solve the problem with that, which I think will almost certainly come through artificial intelligence. But I think you've also maybe had some speakers talking about projects like the Holy Grail, which is looking at digital watermarking, for example, to recover that packaging. And I think the bottom line is that as a producer, you need to do the LCA to look at the very specific examples and comparing those two specific products, and that will tell you. And it will also come down to whether or not carbon is a key driver for your organisation, or whether or not it's circularity.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's been really, really interesting understanding more about the commercial interest of really making sure that we look at less packaging for fresh produce, trying to understand more about the differences between the cardboard issues, and then also what is needed in terms of scaling a lot of the plastic waste that we have as well, which include the bag wrapping aspects, and also understanding more about what is needed for citizen engagement. And it's great to know that it's also Recycling Week as well. Next up, here is a session on design for repair, and over on the collaboration stream, a session with Libby Graff about how to design for adaptation and resilience. Thank you so much.